in spite of all the trade surplus and the stronger currency and the solid international reserve position, we still haven't necessarily seen huge foreign inflows into Brazil. And the equity market is that's an important aspect, the international investor. Do you think that's just a function of tighter monetary conditions globally? Would you expect to see more foreign inflows into Brazil when conditions eventually loosen?
Foreign inflows are very important for Brazil. And foreign share of trading at the São Paulo Stock Exchange is over 50%. Mm-hmm. And you're right. Flows have been very minor this year. They're positive.
Not as positive as the news, though, right? It's been the real rates are high, the currency's strong, agriculture exports are up, but the international investor just doesn't seem to care.
Exactly. And Brazilian investors don't care as well.
Why not?
Because
they'll sit in Selic and they're happy to take their 12.75 and
Exactly. Clients will ask, why not just sit there and place as much as we can in Brazilian gold, which, like I mentioned before, is the Brazilian Selic. So we will have a big discount in valuations. And part of the reason of that disparity in valuations relative to the US market, like the S&P 500 is trading at about 18 times forecast earnings, whereas Brazilian market trades at 8 times forecast earnings. And of course, that has a lot to do with the level of Brazilian interest rates. But also there's another aspect, which I think US portfolios are probably too much weighted towards US assets. There's probably a good reason for that, because US assets are very high quality assets. They have had very high returns over the prior decades, and that's quite significant. However, when you look at the situation at this point in time, you notice that the US represents about 1/3 of the global economy, whereas the market capitalization of US assets equates to 2/3 of the global market capitalization. And I think there is a possibility that might change, of course, over time. And by that I mean a very, very long time, meaning a few decades. But the fact is that the Brazilian economy is so much smaller than the US economy. And if you get a change of direction of inflows, you could have a very good repricing favoring Brazilian assets. Of course, that depends on a lot of economic and financial fundamentals, but I think we have a position at this point in time to be able to make a bullish case for Brazilian assets over the next few years, based on the lower volatility of Brazilian inflation, higher growth rate than the US economy, and that's a very important factor. For the last 10 years, Brazil had a very poor growth rate, much lower than the US, but that's about to change.
Why? What makes you think Brazil is going to continue to grow faster than the US? Is it continued agriculture growth? What parts of the Brazilian economy, more specifically, are you most excited about?
The first thing to say about that is that Brazilian growth is not going to be huge. No, we are talking about sub 2% growth, maybe close to 2%. However, the Brazilian economy was growing nothing for the past 10 years. We call it the lost decade, which was one of the lost decades, by the way. Brazil had quite a few of those in modern times. However, at the same time, the US economy was growing over 3%, whereas right now we have the prospects, according to our projections, of the Brazilian economy growing close to 2%, whereas the US economy might grow closer to 1.7, 1.8%. So that's not a huge difference, but that's a big change relative to what we had in the past. Also, Brazilian inflation, which has been Brazil's major economic problem over the last few decades, has come down relative to developed countries' inflation. Brazil used to have inflation at a spread of about 2.3% higher than US inflation. This has come down to about 1% right now. And we do believe this is gonna hold going forward.